This sanatorium in California may not be Holden's cup of tea, but it sure beats freezing to death while alone and broke in Manhattan. That's what Holden risked when he walked home in the wee small hours of the morning last December. When Holden reached the apartment building, he was in luck. There was a new elevator guy who didn't know who Holden was. All it took was a white lie to get him onto the right floor. Holden also had his house key with him, so he stole into the apartment, careful not to wake the maid or, more importantly, his parents. He found Phoebe sleeping in DB's room. She loved doing that while their big brother was away at work in Hollywood. Holden didn't wake Phoebe straight away, though. She was too cute when she slept. Instead, he poked around the room and admired how organised and clever she was for a 10-year-old. Hey team, just a reminder, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps the channel out, and our next upload could be on something taught in your next class. Thanks, and back to the video. When Holden finally woke Phoebe, she was so excited to see him that she dialed up the volume. This made Holden nervous until he learned that their parents were at a party in Connecticut. Phew! So they chatted, and Holden gave Phoebe the record he'd bought and accidentally dropped. She appreciated the gift and took the broken pieces into safekeeping. Then, Phoebe put two and two together about why Holden was home early. He'd been kicked out of Pensy. Busted! Phoebe was mortified. She knew their parents would hit the roof. Holden tried to reassure her that everything would be okay. He might go work on a ranch in Colorado for a while. But Phoebe was too absorbed in her dramatic reaction to respond. So Holden gave her a minute and went into the living room to steal some cigarettes. When he returned to Phoebe, she was still mad at him for getting kicked out of school. Holden tried to explain why Pensy prep was horrible, but Phoebe was sick of Holden's negativity. She challenged him to name just one thing in the world he really liked. This stumped him. All he could think of was the two nuns he'd met at breakfast and a boy named James Castle. He was a boy from Elkton Hills who was bullied to the point of jumping out of a window. Holden remembers seeing his smashed body on the stone steps. Eventually, Holden said he really liked Allie, their brother who died of leukemia, and he also really liked just sitting together and talking. But Phoebe didn't accept these answers and changed tack. What did Holden want to be? A lawyer like their dad? Nah, what Holden wanted was more abstract. He described a vision of himself, rescuing children who run out of a field of rye and too close to a cliff's edge. He wanted to be the catcher in the rye. It was a reference to a poem by Robert Burns, and Holden knew it sounded crazy. Phoebe didn't respond except to remind Holden that their dad would be furious about Pensy. But Holden didn't care. He had a plan. Holden left the room to phone his favourite teacher from Elkton Hills, Mr. Antolini. Luckily, he answered. When Holden told him he'd been kicked out of school, Mr. Antolini invited him over without hesitation. What a legend! When Holden returned to Phoebe, she had the radio on, so they danced for a while. Afterwards, they sat and talked until Phoebe heard their parents return. Uh-oh. Holden turned off the light, stubbed out his cigarette, and hid in the closet. But it was too late. His mother had seen the light. When she came in to check on Phoebe, she kept lingering and asking questions. Phoebe did her best to act natural until she finally left the room. When Holden came out of hiding, he told Phoebe he had to scoot. He also asked to borrow some money, so she loaned him all of her Christmas money. This made Holden cry, and it took him a long time to stop. Before he left, he gave Phoebe his red hunting hat because he knew she'd love it. By the time he got outside, Holden was feeling dizzy, so he took a cab to Mr. Antolini's instead of walking. When he arrived, Mr. Antolini welcomed him warmly while Mrs. Antolini prepared some coffee. Holden could see that Mr. Antolini was a bit drunk, and their swanky apartment was strewn with remnants of an earlier party. Mr. Antolini offered Holden a cigarette and asked him about Pensy. Holden did his best to explain himself, but he had a shocking headache by that point. He was relieved when Mrs. Antolini brought in coffee and cakes. Mr. Antolini then revealed that he'd had lunch with Holden's father a few weeks prior. Apparently, his dad had received a worrying letter from the headmaster of Pensy Prep. Holden was barely bothered to defend himself. But Mr. Antolini had a lot to say. He was afraid that Holden was headed for catastrophe, perhaps even a fatal one. He offered Holden some philosophical advice about maturity, then urged him to apply himself to an academic education. Mr. Antolini believed that this could be Holden's salvation. By this point, Holden could barely keep his eyes open, so he helped Mr. Antolini make up the couch and soon fell asleep. But a short time later, he woke to a shock. Mr. Antolini was sitting on the floor beside the couch, stroking Holden's head and admiring him. What the heck? Holden was so creeped out that he jumped up, got dressed, and made an excuse to leave. As he made his escape, Holden was sweating and shaking. It was now dawn, and Holden decided to go to Grand Central Station, where all his luggage was. He ended up sleeping on a bench in the station, an experience he doesn't recommend. After too little sleep and only coffee for breakfast, Holden went for a walk down Fifth Avenue. It was Christmassy and pleasant, and seeing all the excited kids around made him miss Phoebe. But as he walked, Holden began hallucinating that he would fall and disappear. To comfort himself, he asked Allie to protect him. Holden walked until he was completely breathless. As he sat on a bench, he formed a plan. He'd travel out west, get a menial job, build a cabin, and live out there for the rest of his life. But first, he had to say goodbye to Phoebe. So he bought a pad and pencil, walked to her school, and wrote Phoebe a note. It told her to meet him at the Museum of Art at 12:15. He then delivered the note to the office ladies with a white lie about its urgency. With nothing else better to do, Holden went to the museum to wait for Phoebe. But while he was there, Holden passed out in the men's restroom. He was in bad shape, but at least he felt less dizzy when he woke. So he simply returned to his waiting spot. Phoebe came late, wearing his hunting hat and dragging a suitcase. In his note, he'd said that he was leaving, so Phoebe had decided to go with him. She begged Holden until he scolded her, reducing her to tears. Holden went and stowed Phoebe's suitcase in the museum cloakroom and came back. He reassured her that he'd changed his mind. He wasn't going to leave. But Phoebe was furious. She threw his hunting hat in his face and refused to return to school. Holden then offered to take her to the zoo, and she trailed behind him in a huff. The zoo didn't cheer Phoebe up. Her mood only lifted when Holden bought her tickets for the carousel. After her first ride, she came over and gave Holden a kiss. She wasn't mad at him anymore. Then, when it started raining, she put his hunting hat on his head to protect him. This really touched Holden, and he promised her that he'd come home. But all he wanted to do in that moment was sit in the pouring rain and watch Phoebe enjoy that carousel. And that's where Holden wraps up his story. He eventually went home, got sick, and was sent out to California to recuperate. He's now enrolled in another school, But that's a problem for next September. Holden's making no promises about applying himself either, so don't ask. When he looks back on his own story, Holden's not sure what to make of it. Except, now that he's finished telling it, he misses everyone he mentioned. That's the downside with stories. You get too attached to the people in them. Don't you think? We hope you enjoyed this Schooling Online production. For more easy lessons, check out our other videos.